If you enjoy this content, please take a moment to rate and review it. Your feedback will greatly impact our ability to reach more people. Thank you. What a wild year it's been, and has ended even wilder than it began. I think the election is definitely the main story that we're all trying to forecast what is going to happen in 2025. But yeah, wild year. Really quickly, I won World No-Gi. So
yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
yes.
It's my last tournament. I'm not doing one. Well, my last tournament for a while.
Yeah,
I'm not doing one.
It's good to go out on top.
Yep, not doing one for pretty much all of next year. Okay, back to the politics and the healthcare industry. Big changes expected over the course of next year as the Trump administration loads up a new regulatory regime with a very, very different agenda than we've seen in a long time in DC.
Yeah, and I think I'm fairly optimistic. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think for the most part, change will be useful and we'll learn some things. Hopefully we'll get a little more efficient. I'm sure there'll be some bumps. Trump is definitely not above breaking eggs as he goes along, but I'm hopeful as we get into the year. I mean, looking back, 2024 we'll cover it, but a lot of good stuff happened this year.
Yeah. So we have a couple of stories we will just touch on, and then we'll spend, I think, the majority of this show trying to recap as well as look ahead, right?
Yes.
All right. So with that, let's dig in. All right, first and foremost, today, Jerome Powell and the Fed cut rates. They did it. I mean, everyone thought that they would do it. They did not massively change their posture based on the data that rolled in. So tell us a little bit about this rate cut.
Yeah, it's a 25 basis point rate cut. They telegraphed that they're planning 2 next year. Of course, that could change as the data evolves.
Comes,
kind of the financial markets are expecting March and September, so it'll be mostly flat. Maybe there'll be a couple cuts. And I think, this is kind of what a soft landing looks like. We haven't totally gotten down to the inflation target, but it's much better than it was. And the job growth is, let's say, bumpy. Some months we're gaining job growth, some months not so much, but it hasn't really fallen off a cliff. So we're kind of holding on there okay. So the stock markets didn't like this particular move. I'm not sure why. It was very telegraphed ahead of time. But I think they probably didn't like the comments about next year. But it's at all-time highs, and so I don't feel too badly for the stock market. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things I was reading in the lead-up were hoping for 3 cuts. When you look here at this New York Times article, they've got a chart here that shows where the Fed officials expect rates to be, and the majority of the Fed officials expect that the rates will be just under 4%. Next year. So, that's not that exciting considering, we're coming from a high of 5.5, just under 4. I think a lot of people would like to be closer to 3. But we're, it's just, as you said, all-time highs. The real estate market didn't crash. Even the commercial real estate market didn't crash. I mean, we didn't actually hit a recession, even though people kept screaming we were in one. It's like, I mean, I don't think we really ever got to one. Unemployment had a small spike, but it kind of stabilized and got back to something that was decent. We resolved most of the labor issues that we had over the course of the year, through actions of strike. We came to the table, came to decisions, Boeing, the dock workers, nurses all across the country. I mean, we had some issues, but we basically worked through them all, truthfully. Yeah, that's right. So I think for the most part, the Fed has delivered on its dual mandate. Yes, it would be good for financial markets and for venture capital markets for the interest rate to go to 0 or negative, but then that would drive inflation up. They're trying to balance these things, and I think doing a pretty good job. All right, a couple of VC stories. Precision Neuroscience zaps $102 million for brain-computer interface. So tell us a little bit about this one. Yeah, so I'm really interested in this. Of course, Elon Musk has been very public with his brain-computer interface. Neuralink, right. And so this is the first one sort of outside of that orbit, and it's pretty exciting. Just the ability to treat a really devastating disease with these tools. It's going to be slow and expensive, but it's pretty exciting that there's now, at least there's several players. I think there's one more that is trying to get funded. So there could be 3 companies in the next 6 months that are out trying to do this.
Yeah, so this is a $102 million Series C, and I think for the process of trying to invent an entire new modality of medicine, the dollar amount seems more than fair. And truthfully, when we look at some of the deals in the biotech space, maybe you could argue we need more dollars being plugged into this kind of innovation. So
yeah, I mean, it's really hard to have that physical interface between the human brain and the computer,
right?
And so I think that costs a decent amount of money.
Yep, agree. And then SpinSci secures $53 million for AI-enhanced patient engagement. So this doesn't sound that different, but that is a fairly large investment. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, it's a large investment. It's direct to the patients using kind of a combination of machine learning and Gen AI, and they're in Dallas. It's great to see some companies getting funded not in the Bay Area in AI.
Yep, so. Agree. All right, our one story on the policy side. So Stopgap funding bill includes sweeping PBM reform, preserves telehealth flexibilities. This is from Healthcare Dive. Yeah. Obviously, PBM reform, something that a lot of people have been calling for. I think we read, was it 2 weeks ago when Elizabeth Warren?
I think it was last week.
Was it last week?
Yeah.
When Elizabeth Warren was talking about it. But yeah, look, I mean, PBM reform seems to be this kind of bipartisan area of agreement, right? Where people just feel that PBMs are fleecing the general public and, doing a lot of crazy shell games with the money in ways that people can't see and can't understand. It's right. Very, very opaque. Mark Cuban's done a, incredible job of demonstrating it via an e-commerce platform. Just,
right.
How much is tied up in the inner workings of PBMs and all these different networks and relationships. And so this stopgap funding bill, I mean, we're recording the show on Wednesday, a little early this week, given the holidays. But I think this is like up for passage.
Yeah, they're going to vote tomorrow and then they leave.
Wow.
And so it's a continuing resolution. I mean, the government needs to pass this in order to stay open. And there are 3 important healthcare things there. The PBM is the biggest by far. I don't love the Congress sort of slipping this into a continuing resolution, but I think I agree with you. It's pretty easy for people to get mad at PBMs when they are painted as kind of the middleman, just taking money that I can't fully understand. Trump was in a press release talking about it yesterday, literally branding them as the middleman, and no one likes the middleman, and we should take them out, or something similar. So
wow, Trump and Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, it's quite a combination, right? Exactly. So it is requiring that it's like 500 pages. I tried to read as much as I could about it, but I think so. I'll get it. I think close to right, but I think that they're not allowed to do reference-based pricing, sort of tying to Medicare pricing. Okay. They need to actually quote a direct price. They can't keep any of the rebates. So if there are any rebates, it needs to be passed on to the end consumer.
Okay.
And their compensation cannot be tied to the rebate or the price or anything that is related to the performance of it.
Wow.
So pretty all-encompassing. I've tried to talk to a few different people in the industry. There's lots of techniques that they might use to try to find other ways to make money. I mean, the PBM industry is pretty good, but I think it's going to be more and more pressure on them and going to be difficult on the payers broadly.
Yeah, agree, because the payers have all embedded a PBM.
Yeah, they've all bought a PBM.
Yeah,
right.
And I feel like just in the last week, I've just heard a lot in the zeitgeist about people realizing that insurance companies own pharmacies. Like, it's just stuff that we just know.
Yeah, right.
But that people are
don't
figuring
understand.
out. They're like, hold on, what? Like, they're like, okay, Walgreens is not an insurance company, right? They're used to pharmacies being like Rite Aid and Duane Reade and Walgreens and things like that. But now they're realizing, oh my gosh, like, you mean CVS,
Aetna, and Caremark are all the same.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, going into
before we leave that, there were 2 other things just to mention. So
okay.
The telehealth regulations got extended, which is great.
Okay. That's great.
Not unexpected, but needed.
Okay, 2 years.
And then the physician's fee schedule was set to be deducted, going down by 2.8%.
Yeah, that was kind of Biden's
and so they have modified that to Still a reduction, but only 0.3%.
Okay.
So much better for physicians.
Starting the turnaround process that I assume that the Trump administration will really turn around. Because
I think that I don't know that we need to cut physician fee schedules.
No, it's not.
So they made it
It's not the
much
right incentive.
better.
It's not the right incentive for the problem that we already have. Right. Okay. AppliedVR's home-based VR device delivers significant relief for high-impact chronic pain patients, says a study. So we've covered AppliedVR in the past. This is a digital therapeutic that has both been approved by the FDA and by CMS. So kind of redemption for the digital therapeutic space. And now they've got a study that's demonstrating that it actually is working and it's reducing chronic pain, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and it was several thousand patients, and they moved them from like high acuity, which I think means you're in pain all the time, to low acuity. You still have back pain, but it's much more manageable. You can go about your life. You can go get a job, go day-to-day stuff. So really significant improvement with this VR device that does not directly treat the pain in any
obviously
chemical way. But it really is helpful in sort of how the patient experiences the pain, how they are able to sort of manage it. And it's had a lot of success. And so I think it's great. They did get CMS is paying for it, the VA is paying for it, and then Highmark has also brought into their network.
I mean, this is great news because, there's so much opportunity for venture capital in the digital therapeutic space. And kind of coming back from the pair debacle and getting something that's being proven to be efficacious in studies and has, codes that are approved. I mean, this is really encouraging stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I think Pear did as well, but they are now the new sort of company everyone's looking to.
Right.
And it's great that they're doing these studies, and it was a blinded studies, well organized. It's difficult to do a control in VR.
Yeah.
But I think they did a pretty good job with the study.
All right, and the final story we're going to cover this week on the AI space is that Meta has linked arms with Elon Musk. This is sort of a continued trend of Mark Zuckerberg aligning with Musk and Trump and that entire regime. Meta urges the California Attorney General to stop OpenAI from becoming for-profit. So Zuck and Musk are both against Sam Altman.
Yes, that's right. And it's really the question of, is it appropriate for a company to start off as a nonprofit, give all the investors or donors, I guess, tax benefits, and then flip to a for-profit sometime thereafter? Zuck is claiming no.
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. So we'll see. I think it's going to be. There's just a lot of money on both sides. OpenAI came out today, I think, with a bunch of email threads from Musk, sort of in the time when he was working there, talking about we have to turn to for-profit and maybe I can own it. So there's a lot of evidence on both sides.
Yeah.
So we'll
part's
see.
not surprising.
Yes, right. But it's difficult for his case.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I was ready to move to the next thing, but why is the VIX up and everything down right now?
I think because of the Fed.
Oh, is that why? It just shot up because of the Fed? Sorry, I'm going off script here.
I mean, the Dow fell 1,000 points
after the Fed.
After the decision.
Okay. Yeah, I was. That story was in the Wall Street Journal. I looked at the ticker at the top. The entire market is down, sort of 2 to 5% across the board. But the VIX is up 74%, which it's all based on the scale. It's not quite in the fire off all the alarms area, but that's a pretty good jump in the volatility index. So, all right, okay. So so just to sort of share real world workings with AI. In case you didn't know, if you happen to be a Google business or enterprise user in terms of like Google Workplace, their tool Notebook LM normally only allows you to use 50 sources.
Right.
And if you are a business or enterprise user, they now have Notebook LM Plus. They're starting to treat the product, Notebook LM, not like a science project, but like a real
different tiers of subscribers.
It's like a real product now. And the big difference is that you can include 250 to 300 different sources in a notebook. So that was a good opportunity for us to just throw all of our shows from this year into Notebook LM and then kind of query it and see what it could come up with in terms of what the key themes and ideas were for the year. You know, can AI actually help us do a year in review show? And Vic, what was your experience with it? Because I kind of tasked you. You didn't know coming into today I was going to be like build a notebook and then ask the system and like let's generate a script.
It was okay. I mean, I think it was easier than me listening to all the shows
for sure.
I'm a big user, and I really like the Gemini product from Google. But I haven't figured out how to leverage the notebook product in the same way. I think it's the same like core LLM behind it. I know it's the same core LLM, but the way it's configured, I haven't been able to get Notebook to do the same kind of output.
Yeah.
And so it has this promise of taking I think we had 73 shows. I know we had 73 shows. And so it has the YouTube link and the transcript for all 73. And it has this promise to be able, you can ask all, the LLM, what happened in those shows and query it, ask for feedback. And then it gives you an answer and references where it found that answer, kind of like almost like a footnote. Kind of. And it was okay. I mean, it gave me a lot of detail and not as much like real value as I was hoping for. And then the references are not super useful. It just links into the meat of the transcript with no formatting. And so there's something in the source at that index point, but it's not that easy for a human to look through. So it was useful, but not as much as I would hope it to be.
So one more question about that before we actually move into reviewing the year. How much do you think that reaction that you just shared with me and the listeners, how much do you think that is driven by your current and, ever expanding expectations of what AI should do for you and how it should perform versus like the first time you used an LLM, right? Like if Notebook LM had delivered that to you the very first time you'd use an LLM, what would you have thought of that response versus like what you think today as someone who's using Gemini, pretty regularly?
I think all of these tools, maybe every tool, but certainly the AI tools, at least for me, I have to learn how to prompt it, how to give it the right context so I get the right answer. And I know how to so I use Notebook for a particular use case, which is not this one. And it's really successful. And that is when I'm interviewing a guest for this show. I'll find the last 20 news articles or maybe another podcast they did or whatever, and put all that into Notebook and kind of go through and figure out what do I want to talk about and how can we frame up a set of questions that will be interesting to the listener, hopefully, and interesting for me. And that's really helpful. Because I think it's because I know a lot less. So like for this show, I kind of, the stuff it gave me, I sort of knew because you and I were doing all the shows.
Right.
So I haven't figured out how to use Notebook for the purpose we're using it right now.
Okay, I understand.
But I mean, was it a year ago or 2 years ago? I think maybe 2 years ago when ChatGPT first came out.
2 years ago. We're 2 years in now.
It's every 90 days, there's a new product that just is like jaw-droppingly good.
Right.
And then I get like desensitized to it and I don't give it credit anymore. So I think that's definitely fair that like Notebook LM is really useful for a variety of things. I already use it for one use case.
Right.
But as you said, we kind of tried to do it in 45 minutes quickly.
Yeah.
And it was okay.
Okay. All right. I mean, look, I think that's important, right? Because our expectations basically establish what the value of these products is going to be economically, right?
That's right. Yes.
So if our expectations continue to change, continue to evolve, continue to rise, then that is going to, I think, make it more difficult for LLM makers in terms of just how great these products need to be.
I mean, the way I think about it is the novelty wears off. Like,
Right.
it has to have utility.
Right.
So 2 years ago, when I was first playing with ChatGPT 2.5 or whatever it was, just like seeing it produce something that was readable and coherent was amazing.
Yeah.
And now I've got the Gemini tool. I have a bunch of context documents that I can use to prompt it. And I'm putting in like 15 pages of context to ask one question.
Right.
I've got a bunch of sort of tooling built up around it, but Notebook I haven't spent much time with. So
Okay. So I actually want to at least try to use.
Yeah. So this is what we have on the screen right now is sort of a summarized, consolidated version of what we got.
Yeah. Yeah. So the key themes that Notebook LM pulled out from our 73, I think you said, shows. Right. The first one is economic and political shifts. First, the K-shaped economy. We should count how many times you used that term
true, right.
Over the course of those 73 shows. And then the second one being the political landscape and how a Republican sweep and changes in regulation and policy are, changing the way that we understand healthcare. I mean, I would say as we go into 2025, those two things, especially, on the backdrop of just stunning, tragic events like the murder of Brian Thompson, sort of what we just talked about with the PBM reform that was put into the Stopgap funding, funding bill. That feels like what we are entering 2025 with, right? Is economic and political shifts. Huge economic and political shifts that are really impacting this previously considered durable sort of disruption resistant industry of healthcare.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind that the healthcare is believed by the entire population of the U.S. and me that it should be available to all Americans, everyone living in the U.S. Some level of healthcare should be available. And there's a ton of debate now on how healthcare should be allocated. What is the appropriate utilization management tools? And if an insurance company is reducing utilization, is that what we all want? And is that fair? And I think at the end of the day, someone has to allocate resources. It can't just be an all-you-can-eat buffet. You can have whatever you want.
Right.
And there might be times when I'm not happy about not being allocated all the healthcare I want.
Right.
And I need to pay some more for it. Where we draw that line, I think, it's like a reckoning in the zeitgeist we're trying to figure out. And that's being done simultaneously with, the K. Like, if you have more than half your net worth in financial assets, your house and stocks and bonds, you do really well when the stock market does well. And I can handle inflation. I'm not worried about it. Yes, I see the price of food going up.
It's not fun.
No, I don't like it, but my financial assets are also going up.
That's right.
And if you don't have you don't own a house, you don't own stocks, you don't own your car, you don't have that benefit, and you're just seeing the cost of living going up, it puts a lot of pressure on people.
Absolutely.
And it's really difficult. And then they feel like they have a bad outcome in a healthcare thing, and it's super emotional because it's your life or a loved one's life. And so it's all kind of intertwined in this economic shift. I think Trump rode this wave of sort of political people being frustrated with the status quo and the existing leadership of our country not really delivering solutions. And I think mostly they just wanted something different.
Yeah.
So anyway, all these things are kind of mixing together, and we have been talking about it. I think it's going to be a big topic for next year.
Yeah, agree. One thing that I would add that as I'm thinking about this, that I feel has been an underlying base of knowledge for you and I that maybe we haven't explicitly talked about very often. It's just maybe in anecdotes we talk about it, is podcasting, and the impact that podcasting had on those political shifts, right? I mean, I don't think it was abundantly clear a year ago today that, you know, the administration that would be walking into the White House would be Trump plus RFK plus David Sachs plus Elon Musk. And truthfully, those bedfellows came together via podcasting.
Yes.
I mean, that's not even X. I mean, X was sort of the extension of the podcast.
Right.
But it really was the podcasts that brought those people together.
Yeah. And I don't trust kind of curated media. I mean, I read and absorb a ton of media because I feel like I need to do right, left, all kinds of different kind of focused media in order to get the holistic view of the world.
Right.
And in a long form, I mean, what Trump is able to do in talking to Joe Rogan or All In or a whole bunch of podcasts over like an hour and a half.
Yes.
Is he can talk about topics for a long time, and the Democrats didn't send anyone else out to give their side of the story. And so it was no one debating against him.
Right.
And that was, I think, a mistake. But I don't think people don't read the morning paper and watch the 6 o'clock news like they used to before. And so they're listening to podcasts. And part of the reason that we started this was just to keep up with all of the flood of stuff ourselves.
Right. Kind of accountability.
Yeah. But I also think it's valuable to have, you know, your own outlet to be able to talk about what you think is important, and people that agree with you or, you know, vehemently disagree with you can hear about it.
Absolutely.
And X is an extension of that, but X is too short form.
Yes.
And so it needs to be in combination with long form things.
Agree. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think, you know, so much of what we're going to see next year. I had lunch on Monday with someone who, you know, I would consider very engaged politically, locally, and is very passionate about, you know, the state of the world from a political perspective. Very smart, well-off person. You know this person.
Yeah.
And this person really didn't know about the influence that crypto had in this election.
Didn't even understand it.
Didn't even
know it existed.
Didn't even understand it. And I think that's easily more than half of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, probably something like 70 or 80% of the country doesn't get that. And there's something really.
I mean, I was at a dinner last night with a bunch of well-educated, wealthy friends of mine.
Yeah.
And no one knew how Bitcoin works or why is it going up or anything.
Well, if they didn't know that, then they don't know what fair shake is, right?
Right.
Then and they don't know about what Brian Armstrong has been doing, and they don't understand that David Sachs is now the crypto czar.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that the new SEC chair is like a Bitcoin maxi.
Right.
And they you know what I mean? Like, they don't understand these things. And these are massive things, Vic. These are not like little toys that you and I are interested in. This is a resetting of the financial ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway.
Yes. So I think podcasts, I mean, I probably listen to 5 or 7 podcasts every week.
For sure.
And then there's another 15 that I'm like dipping in. It depends who they're interviewing or whatever.
Who they're interviewing, yeah.
But I don't really listen to the radio in the car
No, that's over.
Right. So
that's over.
And it's not because I'm trying to get ahead. It's actually entertaining. And I learn stuff as well, but it's all of the above.
All those old formats, they just cannot keep up with the pace of things at this point. They don't, and also they have ostracized many of the actual leaders in these technologies. You know, the leaders in these technologies do not feel that they can engage with the media and have their story told correctly, right?
Yeah.
They feel like there's always these hit pieces, these gotcha pieces. The journalists have their own agendas, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, I don't need this. All I need is an X account and either my own podcast or go on my friend's podcast.
Yeah,
like I don't, I literally don't need to talk to the mainstream media anymore, right? It's just, there's no upside to it. And so when that is, look, the president of the United States, president-elect, I should say, I mean, he, outside of Fox News occasionally, he doesn't talk to the media.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's a really big part of this new world. And there are so many people who are not up to speed on that. Yeah. That's the crazy part about it.
Yeah. And it's changing quickly and a little bit intimidating, I think. But my advice is just to jump in.
Yeah. I mean, Vic, you can't really say it's intimidating for you. I mean, we were listeners. I mean, we probably listened to like All In episode 1, probably.
Yeah. I know I did.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay. Yeah. So we, and
I don't mean that listening to podcasts is intimidating. I mean, crypto or AI or.
But I guess what I'm saying is.
Which one to pick?
I guess what I'm saying is this podcast, when you and I said we must do a podcast, right? It was inspired by All In.
Yes. Right.
I'll admit I stopped listening when it got super political. I was like, I was in for the VC and the market stuff, But I just could see these guys changing their own minds and like evolving their own thinking about stuff. And I was like, that's something you and I need to do. And now we're over 100 episodes in, and our command of what's going to happen next year. I mean, we're probably in the 1% of people who like understand what is going to happen, you know?
Yeah. And so I had to call one of our portfolio companies on a topic over the last couple of days. And so I hadn't talked to him probably in a year and a half. He's in Foundry. So he's, he's not in my direct portfolio, but in the broader thing. And he listens every week. He's probably listening right now. And so it was great. We got to chat about like a couple things that he was interested in, that he knew. He knew my point of view, your point of view, and we could sort of like quickly find common ground. And then we moved on to the topic that we're talking about. But it's great to have.
That's
it's
really valuable.
Yeah.
Really valuable. Okay, let's go into the VC investment themes for 2024. Okay, so investors target specific niches, including home health care, pediatric care, fertility, and chronic pain. Yeah,
I think that's right. It definitely is a trend where investment firms are trying to find one disease state, understanding the reimbursement landscape, understanding the existing status quo, and trying to either build a whole vertical treatment path or plug in the right thing based on how big they are.
AI for healthcare. We've obviously covered a lot of that, especially revenue cycle and ambient scribes. Yep. Back office and revenue cycle solutions are attracting strong investment. Yeah. Later stage funding rounds are growing, indicating confidence in established companies. Yes, that's a trend we've seen. IPOs are showing signs of recovery, offering new avenues for investment and growth. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much I agree with that one.
I mean, Amada filed an S1, but that's
whatever. And then global innovation is rising as companies outside the U.S. gain funding. Yeah, I mean, we definitely covered a lot of AI companies from Australia and across Asia that were getting funding, and because they were able to get regulatory approval outside of the U.S. Right, and then hopefully they can become stateside companies.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that, like a lot of these things, I've been waiting for that to happen for 10 years.
I know.
I feel like we can learn from other parts of the world and they can learn from us and we could trade back and forth, but it hasn't happened yet. Maybe
pre-pandemic, we tried to do it in the UK.
Right.
The next one, increased attention on the role of private equity in healthcare. This was a big one, and I actually expect this to really kind of reverse course in the Trump administration, both because of sort of, I think a lot of private equity leaders supported Trump. So I think that, there's going to be some proper association there. We already know that Lena Khan is no longer the FTC chair, and so that total agenda of focusing on private equity will probably get a lot more nuance now. It'll probably be much more about bad actors in private equity as opposed to private equity as a bad actor, period, right? But let's go through these bullet points. Increased scrutiny. The impact of private equity on the healthcare industry is under increasing scrutiny from the media and regulators. Yes. Concerns about gutting healthcare systems. Regulators are concerned about private equity firms purchasing healthcare organizations such as hospitals and physician groups and then reducing access to care or lowering quality to maximize profits. Vic, I gotta say, this is pretty good.
Yeah,
It's pretty
yeah,
good. It's pretty good. Negative PR, government intervention. The government is intervening and is requesting public input on the impacts of corporate ownership of healthcare. The FTC is also scrutinizing mergers and acquisitions more closely. And then PE as a facilitator of innovation. Some private equity firms are seen as contributing to innovation by investing in new technologies and business models. That's a pretty good rundown of our discussions on private equity.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't know if it's going to get that much friendly under Trump. I think in my mind, there are two. I mean, there's 100 variations, but there are two large strategies in private equity, right? You can acquire a business, maybe put some leverage on it, and then reduce costs and sort of through the leverage get pretty good returns. Or you can acquire something and then do add-on acquisitions and kind of change the strategy and more growth related. And I think in healthcare, it's I think even under the Republicans, it's going to be challenging to do the former, where you're sort of cutting a lot of things and using leverage only. But we'll see.
I think we'll see. I'm not sure that the philosophy of the Trump administration is to meddle in the way that people do business. I mean, they've already said that if you invest $1 billion here, we'll waive all the environmental checks, right? So that just doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't rhyme to me with what I'm seeing coming out from them.
Yeah.
I do think that they will stop bad actors, period. But under Lena Khan, it has been a blanket attack.
Yes.
And I can't see how it doesn't get better.
It's not going to be worse. Yeah, it's going to be better than that.
It's got to be better than that, right? It's got to be better than that.
Yeah.
All right. Healthcare's key areas of innovation. GLP-1s. I don't even think we need to read
no
any
question
further.
about that. Yeah.
Direct-to-consumer healthcare. Brands like Eli Lilly and Amazon may go directly to consumers using unbranded doctors, which could significantly disrupt how healthcare services are delivered. That's a good call out.
Yeah.
That's a good catch. And then AI in healthcare. So, yeah, I mean, so what's missing from that list of healthcare's key areas of innovation from our show? We talked about GLP-1s a lot. We talked about AI in healthcare a lot.
Yeah, I think that there's something around health systems beginning to evolve themselves to being in the post-COVID world kind of a more efficient and take care of their nurses and their staff, but also deliver that more efficiently.
I mean, would you? But if you're the LLM, do you think that should go into key areas of innovation?
I mean,
I'm not sure I would put it in key areas of innovation.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's efficiency, right? I mean, you can broaden that definition.
Yeah, I'm not trying to pick on notebooks.
No,
So,
I'm reading it for the first time, and I feel like it's doing a decent job here. Okay, we have nothing under regulation.
I added that because I want to talk about it eventually.
We'll keep going and we'll circle back to that. Yeah. So, technological advancements in AI. So, NVIDIA's software push. We did talk quite a bit about that, about the fact that NVIDIA is not just going to be a hardware maker, but they rolled out that music and sound LLM.
We didn't cover it, but they rolled out a consumer edge product for $250 this week.
Really?
Yeah.
Hardware product?
Hardware and software. It's just like an all-inclusive AI utility. Like you just buy this thing $250 and you can use it.
Oh, so it's like what Rabbit was supposed to be.
Yes. It's a hardware and software unit that you can put at your beach house and just have it, whether you have the internet or not, doesn't matter.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Jensen Wang is pretty smart. They're selling this product to robotics companies as like the robot's brain, and then they just repackaged it,
right?
And now they're selling it to consumers.
Right, it's kind of like Raspberry Pi.
Yeah,
it's just like a component, but you can put an interface on it and give it to consumers too.
Right.
Wow. Gen AI, okay, obviously.
Yeah.
AI safety and ethics. So yeah, we did talk quite a bit about this. So Notebook said there's a discussion around the safety and ethical use of AI and how the technology can be used to influence people to do harmful things or things against their own interests. So yeah, we definitely covered that. And then AI regulation. We talked a lot about that. Regulators must ensure safety and reliability before broadly opening the market for AI, particularly when it comes to the use of AI in a healthcare setting. So yeah, I think those all kind of cover the key things we talked about in AI.
The thing I would add is I think we spent a decent amount of time just keeping up with the frontier models. Like, what can they do? What's realistic? What's not realistic?
Yep. And the battle between them.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Okay, consumer trends and behaviors, the next big category. The first one, importance of consumer brands. There is an indication that consumer brands are now stronger than health system brands, which has been a long-standing challenge. What do you make of that?
I don't know what that means.
That doesn't mean anything. Okay, that was a bad one, notebook. Personalized health strategies, the need for personalized health strategies, including diet and exercise plans to mitigate the risk of heart disease. Is that from one of your heart health shows?
So I think, so we had, gosh, I don't know, there were 50 weeks in the year. So we had like 20 to 23 guest episodes.
Yeah. You did a lot of them.
I think I did 6 focused on heart health.
Yeah.
As a carve out, because I have heart disease and I'm really interested in that. And so I think probably it's pulling out conversations around heart disease or other guest episodes where we talked about, like I did a longevity one that got a lot of people interested in that. So I think probably some of the guest episodes
are popping in here.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading all 4 of these and I'm like, this whole section, concerns about long-term medication use and then weight cycling. I'm like, these were not big.
I don't know what those are.
Yeah, these were not big topics that we discussed very much. So, okay, I think on that one, maybe we should have left out some sources and maybe we would have gotten clearer.
Yeah, we could have left out all the guest shows, perhaps.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay, so something to think about for the future. All right, you added in regulation and reimbursement in 2025.
Yeah, so before I showed up and we did this experiment, I was thinking about like, what do I want to talk about? And my feeling is that we need to figure out how to launch CareView. But there's maybe 3 big subsectors of healthcare.
Yep.
Broadly, providers of care, health systems and doctors, payers, insurance companies, and then pharma, and any other kind of device or other things that are not payers or providers.
Yep.
And my belief is that all of them are going to be under pressure next year, have some headwinds next year. And I thought it'd be useful to sort of talk through the regulatory and reimbursement headwinds, maybe other headwinds or tailwinds, if we can think of some too.
Okay.
So probably the most challenged area is the payer space. I mean, we just talked about the PBM. Being.
Are you sure? Pharma, I think, is running neck and neck.
Yeah, maybe pharma. Pharma, I feel like there are 2 types of pharmaceutical companies. There are companies like Pfizer that don't have a lot of like new, innovative, really life-changing diseases.
Right.
And then there's Novo Nordisk, Lilly, Regeneron that I think are going to be really good.
Right.
But yeah, pharma is very challenged if you're in that case of we have a bunch of drugs that we've been selling for 15 years, or we run ads on TV all the time. That's going to be really challenged. I think.
If you're doing GLP-1 or cancer, I think you're in good shape.
Yes, right. Yeah, there's a bunch of brain things that I think could be good too.
That are interesting as well. Yeah. Okay. But back to your point about payers. You were walking down a path with that.
Yeah, so I think in payers, there's sort of subsegments of the payer space, which is why we need to roll out CareView. But I'm going to talk about maybe Medicaid, Medicare, the PBMs, and then commercial.
Okay.
I think those are significantly differentiated enough that you sort of need to think about them each.
Okay.
The PBMs are probably under the most pressure. It's in front of Congress today to put significant change, bringing, transparency and much less ability to make outsized returns. Not that they won't make anything, but I think that's going to be a very difficult space.
Yeah.
In the Medicaid space, I also think it's pretty challenging. With the redetermination, they're losing members, and a lot of those members were very profitable because they didn't use that much care.
Yep.
And then we'll see how the waivers play out, but I think there's going to be some challenge as those waivers need to get renewed in the next administration. They get approved. So what happens is the state goes to the federal CMS and requests a waiver. A lot of it is social determinants of health or some other thing they want to experiment with.
Yep.
And the Biden administration granted a lot of waivers. I think the Trump administration is going to try to move towards block grants or maybe be less open to the waiver. So we'll see. But I think Medicaid's going to be a challenge. Medicare and Medicare Advantage is the next one. It's more in the middle. I think we've been covering it for a long time. They're getting less growth. There's fewer boomers aging in, and it's been, a very competitive space.
It probably can't handle another big knock, right? I mean, it's been embattled for a year and some months. So it's just kind of in the category of being a challenged, payment model now.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I don't think, of the four categories, it's not as challenged as PBMs or Medicaid.
Agree.
But commercial is the last one. I think commercial is the best positioned.
Yep, agree.
So Cigna is probably, although they have a PBM. So anyway, that's kind of how
Everyone's
I think
got
about
PBM though.
Yeah. Well, the Blues don't.
The
have
individual
PBMs.
Blues don't. Yeah.
Right. And then when we think about health systems they have pretty good volume and acuity has been pretty steady. Decent.
Yeah.
And so their volume and their revenue is going to hold up fine.
Yeah.
But I think their costs are with it. I expect inflation to continue to be 3%.
Particularly on labor, which is not even directly tied to inflation.
Right.
It's certainly correlated, but it's kind of like its own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they're going to have, and labor is probably 65% of the health system's budget. So I think that they're going to have, very limited opportunity to grow revenue, although it's healthy, but the cost is going to be growing more quickly than revenue.
Yep.
And so the way to get away from that or solve that riddle is you have to be more efficient. You have to use technology in some way. You have to see more patients with the same number of people, and any combination of those things. And I think the for-profit systems and the scaled national nonprofits, we've talked about this before. They're well positioned, already working on that for years.
Yeah, that's right.
And the nonprofits that are subscale are going to be challenged
if they don't have an embedded payer.
Yes, right. And then I think there's a question about 340B, which is a big source of revenue.
Yep.
For especially those smaller, all the nonprofits, but the smaller ones. So that's kind of how health systems are shaping up.
Also, supplemental payments.
And so, yes, and
right. That means part of your Medicaid challenge issue, right?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be, it'll favor really well-run, efficient, good operators on health systems.
Either at scale or payvider.
Yeah.
That's your options.
Yes.
If you're in the health system game, be at scale or be a payvider.
Yeah. Payvider with commercial book.
Mm-hmm. With a commercial book.
Which most of them would have.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I think that covers them all because we covered Farmer first.
Yeah. I think you're right. The way I try to think about it is kind of back to our podcast conversation, maybe a little bit less at that layer, although I completely agree with your assessment. I think each one of those books of business are sort of challenged for the exact reason that you said. Mm-hmm. And then I think in addition to all of that, there is this overarching philosophy that the Trump administration is going to enter with, right? And if we remember from Trump term 1, our friend Larry Van Horn, was advising President Trump then, and really sort of the two big themes were price transparency and competition. Right. Mm-hmm. And let this thing be a free market activity.
Yeah.
Let healthcare be a proper free market activity. It's not a proper free market activity right now. You got the certificate of need.
Yeah.
You got,
there's
all this regulatory capture, there's all this stuff. Right. So he was already moving in that direction, but then, COVID and a million other things kind of stopped that in his tracks. Right. So I believe that is going to come in, but now you have to add on top of that the energy of Doge and this commitment, even with the Treasury head, to cut the deficit and to cut government spending significantly. Well, where is the bulk of government spending? Military and healthcare, right? So healthcare is in the target. We're seeing Elon tweet about healthcare more than we ever have.
Yes,
he's never tweeted about healthcare, and now he's tweeting about it regularly, right? So that's there's this macro threat to cut and big sweeping efforts. Mm-hmm. Block grants may be how that shows up, but I would not put it past them to do more than that. I guess is what I would say. And then the other thing is VCs are in the house. I mean,
right.
It's Sachs and Andreessen, and you know what I mean?
Peter Thiel.
This VCs. So this is going to be a pro VC, pro innovation, pro competition environment for healthcare. I think just as a macro philosophy, right? That's my belief. And so I think when you layer all the things you said about just the inherent industry challenges with the cohort of people around Trump in term 2 that were not around him in term 1.
Right.
To go back to where you started the show, that's kind of exciting. It's exciting for us, right? I think because innovators may finally get a fair shot at trying to improve healthcare in America, right?
Yeah, and it's I mean, I think a meritocracy and allowing really good operators, people that are delivering care, or maybe they're payer and underwriting care and really help their patients get healthier, or they're creating a new drug that does something really amazing. That will be good to sort of let that grow, let that succeed.
That's right.
But the result is creative destruction, right? Like it will cause the incumbents to struggle, and it will be bumpy, let's say. And the one disagreement I have with you is that I don't know that, it could be wrong, but I think that Doge is going to follow the script that they wrote in the Wall Street Journal, because it's the best way to protect themselves legally from executing these things. So they basically are going to stand on the Chevron doctrine being gone, and if it's not a law, then it is subject to be cut.
Yeah, but I mean,
but
Vic, that all of healthcare is run under HHS. So little of it is run in the Senate anymore. I mean, I guess that's my point. Is so much of the power of healthcare in America has been centralized under HHS. You know, I mean, every year all these rules that come out, and all these payment schedules, and all these vouchers, and all these waivers, and all this stuff. It's not going through Congress.
Yeah, so I think that there are aspects of Medicare and Social Security that are difficult to change without congressional movement.
We agree.
But it's likely that they could get Congress to do something. But I don't know that's the first place they'll go. I think that there's plenty of places to cut in the staff at HHS or the staff at somewhere else.
Well, sure. But I guess what I am saying is that there is some large percentage of the healthcare industry as we know it today, in those 3 sectors you talked about, payer, provider, and pharma, where the dollars and how they are allocated and how they are routed is engineered at the regulatory agency level and not at the Senate level. That authority has been, more than almost any other big budget area, it lives under the executive administration and the regulatory apparatus. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of my point, is I do think there is room for Doge to do that. Now, what's really interesting is we didn't see sort of any of the selections really demonstrate any strong knowledge from a healthcare economics perspective. But, you could always bring that talent in. That talent doesn't have to be sort of the key leader. So that would be maybe the only. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's right. I think you're also right that the ethos maybe, or the way that they're all, well, not all guys, but all the guys we've been talking about so far, right? Like Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, even Vivek Ramaswamy, JD Vance,
David Sachs,
they all will look at it like a venture capitalist or like a CEO executive. And I think you and I know how that goes. They want to, I mean, Elon's talking about cutting $1 trillion from the budget. And he's going to look at the biggest pots of money because that's the place to start. That's where I would look. That's where any executive would look. And healthcare is a big pot of money. And so there's going to be some questions about why do we spend $4 trillion on healthcare?
And look, and here's another thing. And this just gets into relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Silicon Valley has been unsuccessful in healthcare.
Yeah.
Over all these years. So there are not good relationships there.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a lot of sympathy and empathy there.
Right.
for the creative destruction. Right? I mean, especially, and again, this is sad commentary, right? But especially when you understand that the general public pretty much doesn't like the healthcare industry.
Right.
Right. So now you know it's not even politically suicidal to take big swipes at them. Right. Hence the PBM reform getting pushed into the Stopgap bill. Right. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, right? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I think we need doctors and nurses and people that deliver care.
Couldn't agree more.
The rest of it, I think, is open for debate. And I choose to be optimistic about it. I think all of these guys believe that they're going to make a positive impact on the country.
Sure.
Now, they may do things that have unintended results. They may make mistakes, but in general, cutting regulation, not spending $20 trillion a year, and increasing the deficit for our grandkids and great grandkids is probably good.
That's right.
And I don't know. I'm hopeful that there'll be enough innovation, enough payers, providers, pharma companies that can come up with good solutions and are fine with being transparent about what they do because they're delivering value.
Look, to your point, the doctors and the nurses and actually receiving people when they need care, let's not screw with that. But there's a million other parts of our healthcare industry that, for a very long time have been sacred cows.
And a lot of those parts challenge the doctor to get the job done. Like, it's hard.
I remember when I did my first keynote at the HFMA annual. I think it was in 2019. I think is when I did
down in Miami. Is that what?
Yeah. And you know who I opened up for? ZDogg MD.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Okay. In 2019, ZDogg MD was talking to the healthcare finance segment of the health system industry about moral injury. About don't call it burnout, call it moral injury.
Yeah.
Call it what it is. Doctors who decided to dedicate their lives and go to 12 years of school plus residency to work 12 to 14-hour shifts to take care of people for the rest of their lives, being forced to do things that are not actually in line with the oath that they took and the sacrifices that they made. And driving people to quit the profession, driving them to suicide, driving them to all manner of things. Yeah. It was 2019, when he was talking about that. So none of this is not new. It's not like the industry has been a great friend to doctors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we accept sort of subpar performance from the industry just as that's just how it is. Like, I went to the ED because I'm an idiot and cut my finger. And, I'm an insider. Like, I know how it works. And so I just ignore the bills. I mean, I cut my finger around Labor Day, and now we're here at Christmas. And poor St. Thomas Ascension, I'm sorry, I haven't paid you yet. And it's because the bills aren't right. Right? Like, at first I owed $2,700. Insurance wasn't paying anything. And then it kept coming down and down. And I just waited.
Just wait.
But that's ridiculous. We can look on the internet today and see, okay, the Fed cut rates 2 hours ago. The stock market reacted in this way. It's all accurate and up to date in real time.
I can know what the price of Bitcoin is at any point in time and buy it for that price. Spot.
Right. Why is it so hard to do a very generic, I cut my finger, I needed 4 stitches. It's not a complicated thing to bill for.
And Vic, next year, it's no longer going to be taboo to ask that question.
Yeah.
It's going to be, people are going to ask that question and they're going to be like, this is ridiculous. Like, fix it, change it,
And a lot of people pay the damn bill, which is terrible.
God,
and then pay like $2,500 and you didn't know it.
Yeah, because you're scared.
Yeah,
that,
right.
But guess what? How scared are you going to be if there's no consumer protections or this thing doesn't go to your credit report anymore?
Yeah,
which we talked about last week.
Yeah,
how scared are you going to be if the hospital? So this is what I mean, I guess. Like there's so many little things that can happen that can really create a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And just make way for just brand new healthcare businesses, businesses. So
well, I'm excited about it, and I think we're VCs, so change and innovation and new things is good. But I think in Nashville, in general, like empowering providers and alliance systems and getting payers to be really partners with us, let's be really clear. No city in America has a better opportunity in this moment. That's right. For all the reasons. Yes. If you're talking about healthcare, for all the reasons. Yes. The best operators, and it's a triple red state. It's been pro crypto for the longest. The Bitcoin conference was held here. Right. The healthcare industry here, when it comes to actually taking care of lives, absolutely unrivaled. More and more dollars flowing into the city from a capital allocation perspective than ever. Oracle Health. It's like, are you kidding me? I forgot Oracle's doing the Oracle Health thing next summer. Are you kidding me, dude? Yeah. Like, there's not a city in America that has a better opportunity to deliver what the next version of the healthcare industry is going to be. Right. So this should not be scary to Nashville. Yeah. It really shouldn't. Really shouldn't. I mean, it's Nashville's opportunity to lose at this point. Right. Yeah. So I think it'll be fun to see it all play out. And I think Nashville and Health Further and our portfolio, and really anyone who wants to jump in and make a positive difference. That's the thing about meritocracy. If you create something that works, I think it can be included. Absolutely. All right. Well, I got to go to a comedy show. Nice. Great year of recording with you. Yes. Always fun. Always learn a lot from you. Thank you for all your work on the show. And we will see all of you in the new year. Next week's show will be a guest show that Vic recorded. And so please do tune into that. We've got sort of a total rock star in the healthcare startup world. I mean, he's incredible. You got to listen to the show, but you have one big exit and maybe you're good, maybe you're right time, right place. But I think he's done 5. He's on his 5th now. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And all successes. Yeah, so all far. Successes. Yeah. So tune into that show next week. And for Vic and myself, we will see you all in 2025. Yeah, happy holidays.